Hi everyone, this is Olga Adler from Austin Businesswoman, and today we're hosting a webinar dedicated to a very important problem and goal of assuring our family's future. And we're going to talk to estate planning, family law, finance, taxes, and real estate experts so you can avoid painful mistakes when it comes to owning property or sending your kids to college or getting married or getting divorced, and we'll even touch the problem of retiring. So I'm gonna let our speakers introduce themselves before we jump to our questions, and we'll start with Victoria.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Victoria Briones Magallanes, and I'm one of 8 advisors with the Rainier Financial Group. We are local here in Austin, and our group has collectively over 100 years of financial planning experience. We are all ladies, so if that's something that is near and dear to your heart, come on down. But we do personal, estate, and business financial planning, and they're all a bit different, and some of them tie into each other. So that's what we do.
Awesome. Thank you. Marla?
Hi, I'm Marla Hayes, and I work with AZ Law, which is a new starting company, I guess that's in the Kyle Buda area, just south of Austin. But we do also work with people in Austin, Williamson County, all the surrounding counties, and I do family law.
Wonderful. Thank you. Bianca?
Hi, my name is Bianca Flores. I am also a family law attorney here in Austin. I've been practicing 9 years now. And so we practice in Williamson County, Travis County, all surrounding counties.
Thank you. Deanna?
Hi, I'm Deanna Johnson. I'm an EA and I'm founder of Tax Charm. Tax Charm is a consulting firm. We offer tax prep services, tax strategy sessions, and monthly bookkeeping plans. I've been doing taxes for maybe 11 years, but I've owned my own business since 2014. Our clients include small business owners and freelancers. We also serve individual taxpayers. So our mission is to empower small business owners and freelancers by giving them the tax tools and accounting resources they need to run profitable and tax compliant businesses. I'm very honored to be here on this panel of these beautiful and intelligent women change makers and business owners.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We're honored to have you. Vivi.
My name is Viviani, also known as Vivi Pearson. I am a mortgage loan officer or a loan originator, mortgage broker. I'm a part of the New City Mortgage team. Our branch is located in Houston. However, I am piloting our Austin location here, and I'm excited to serve. I specialize in divorce mortgage. I also love educating. So one of the key things that I do with my clients is walk them through the process and make sure that they're aware of the big decision making that they're about to embark on. Having asset and home ownership is probably one of the biggest assets anyone can have. So knowing the process, understanding what you're getting into is one of the things that I pride myself in. Outside of that, definitely a community advocate, philanthropist at heart. I stand by 3 pillars, which are to educate, empower, and to give back to the community. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Sasha.
Hi, everyone. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you so much, Olga, for organizing this. Wow, this beautiful, professional, strong, smart young women. So my name is Sasha Vasquez. I've been with Realty Austin for about 3 years. I've been doing real estate in Austin area since 2016, early 2016. So I've started before Austin blew up. I guess it was starting to blow up back then, but not to the extent that we've seen in the last year in terms of real estate. So I have been in the trenches of it all. I started working with mainly first-time home buyers at the beginning, and now I am actually working with a lot of investors. And lately, it's been kind of interesting. I wasn't searching for it, but I became an investor specialist. I knew investors. So I my whole thing lately has been educating and brand new investors like you and me, somebody who's trying to just get their feet wet in buying an investment property. So say they already have their own property and they want to, get the piece of that pie. So they come to me because we personally own 3 homes. One of them is our primary residence, and we're actually under contract for the 4th one. So that's why people kind of like, how do you do that? So hopefully I can share a little bit of how you can get into this Austin market. So that's me.
Thank you. Can't wait to pick your brain because you practice what you preach.
Oh, yeah.
And last but not the least is Ify Ibekwe.
Are y'all able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, sorry, I lost my voice on Monday, but it's the best it's been all week. My name is Ify Ibekwe. I am an estate planning attorney, and I work throughout the state of Texas and Arkansas as well. And I differentiate myself because I want to activate breadwinning women who want to get their estate in order, be able to make decisions when there are health emergencies, or if they know that in the future they might need somebody to help them with financial decision making if ever they're incapacitated. And so I do a lot of educating on the subject as an estate planner. I think, Sasha, you talked about moving to Austin when it was blowing up in 2015. I originally moved here to go to UT in 1999. Wow. And so I have so many regrets about real estate, but I have seen the genesis of a lot of this new wave of movement from all over the country and the world to come to Austin. It's really inspiring. It's a wonderful market to be in. Candidly, I actually live in Bentonville, Arkansas, and so I come back and forth because I sold my house. It was a great time to sell a house and get out of there. And so that was one of the things I did during the pandemic. I'm so excited to be on this panel with you wonderful, successful women. I already feel like I'm following all of you and I'll be reaching out. And it's just great to invite me on here, Olga. I'm so glad.
Thank you. Thank you for joining. And our mission today is to make all of your professional field approachable for average people, average girls and boys and families who are just starting, or maybe families just consist of you. A lot of advice today is going to apply to individuals and big families with several generations and many family members. And so we're going to try to help everyone. And so let's start going through life-changing events and seeing what mistakes people could avoid if they get professional advice at the right step from the right person. So say a couple wants to get married, and a question that a lot of people try to avoid, they don't discuss it in public: do we need a prenuptial agreement? So I'm directing this question to our professionals, and we want to hear your opinion. People need it, if people need it, and how it helps them avoid mistakes future. I'd like Bianca to start.
Sure, thank you. Do you need it? No. I mean, actually, prenuptial agreements are not that common in Texas. But when should you think about possibly getting a prenuptial agreement? First of all, what is a prenuptial agreement? It's a contract between two parties, two people thinking about getting married, and it controls the division of property. Here in Texas, it's a community property state. So that means that anything that you purchase, you acquire during your marriage, it's 50-50%. Each partner owns that property, regardless of who actually purchased the property, if it's only in one person's name, if it's only, etc. So that's one. Two, I think that it's an uncomfortable question. It's an uncomfortable discussion when you're deciding whether or not you want a prenuptial agreement. It's one of those things that people tend to put off, but I think it's one of those things that you should individually think about, consider if you want one or not. And if you decide that you do want one, I think it should be part of your checklist for a wedding, right? It should be right at the top. Have that conversation. Yes, I want it. No, I don't want it. And why? Why is it that I do want one and why not? And so obviously it's going to be a conversation that you need to have an agreement with your partner. So that's what I would say at the beginning, as soon as possible, and just have that discussion and, decide what's best for you and your relationship.
Olga, can I ask
Yeah,
a question for her?
Of course.
Bianca, and just because I deal with a lot of divorce clientels, and I would want it coming from you, being that is your expertise and you are in law. I get the question: can you still get a prenup even though we are in a common law state, and how would that work?
So Texas is one of the few states that recognizes common law marriage, and so normally a prenuptial agreement is before a formal marriage. And so, I've never seen it to be that you have a prenuptial agreement, but you never get married. You never get formally married. And the issue with that is that a common law marriage, you still have to prove it up. There's certain factors that you have to go in front of the judge and say, this is why they meet the common law definition. So that normally never happens. So to answer directly, I'm not sure, but if you anticipate getting married, I would say go ahead and do it. It's not going to hurt you if you have one. If you eventually decide to get legally married, then, you have that in place. So if you do file a divorce, then you can lean on that and have your property protected with the prenuptial agreement.
And assets, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and if I can jump in there, I think a lot of that depends on whether you have two people that are intending to be in a common law marriage. Because if you have two people that are just like, basically the three factors are that they agreed to be married, they're living together as husband and wife, and then they're going to, hold themselves out to the community as husband and wife. So like filing joint taxes, blah, blah. But if you are people that are doing that and don't want to actually be considered common law married, we do cohabitation agreements, which is very similar, I think, to a prenuptial agreement, where it's people that are kind of in a non-traditional relationship that want to really clearly delineate, what is mine, what's yours, what do we want to happen when we stop cohabitating or when we stop being in a relationship. So those would be the two issues for me. If you are intending to common law marry because you just don't want, the government in your business, but you still do want to be like legally recognized as married, I think you could still do a premarital agreement, which is essentially just a contract, right? Anybody can make a contract, whether they're married or not. So I think those would be your two routes to go. Either I am living with somebody and I want to be basically married, but not married, you're going to go cohabitation agreement. If you are, for some reason, just in love with the idea of being common law married, I would still do a prenuptial.
Okay. That's good to know, because I get a lot of those questions.
I know.
I'm like, wait, my skill set, yes, I do specialize in divorce mortgage. However, I advise you to go to an attorney in that regard. Yeah.
I have a quick question. I want to pick your brains, family law ladies. So can you speak a little bit about owning a property as an individual prior to getting married? How would that work if you are going to get a divorce in the future? Not that you're going to plan, but can you just speak a little bit about, separate property prior to marriage?
That was actually our next question, because we also have a estate planning specialist, and that's naturally comes out of the conversation. I'm glad.
Yes.
So as you indicated, if you purchased it before you actually got married, then it is considered separate property, which is completely different from, marital property. So that wouldn't be divisible upon divorce. Anything that you inherit, that you purchase before divorce, that you get as a gift, that's separate property. That's yours by yourself. Upon a divorce, that's still yours by yourself. You don't share it with your spouse.
Yeah. But so part of the reason we want to do these premarital agreements is that people come into relationships with separate property, right? Like if you both own a house, but then somebody oftentimes in a divorce will make claims that say, hey, I helped improve your property, right? So I get some money back from that. Like I helped pay for a deck. I helped pay for a pool. I helped, pay the mortgage when you were unemployed. And then we get these reimbursement claims that can, blow up in your face and be very complicated and very expensive to litigate. So in your premarital agreement, it will usually say something like, this is my separate property, and any income I get from that property, any, improvements on it, anything like that, it's still going to accrue to me, right? So you just, as as the other spouse, have to read this contract and make a decision about, well, hey, if I put money into this, what am I going to get back? Because that's going to accrue only to you, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of setting up that idea of we have two different businesses, even though we are joint and married, but, we're going to have to make conscious decisions about, if I put money into your property versus you putting money into my property, right? And I mean, it also will say that you have the option to have joint accounts for your bills and everything like that. If you consciously put money into a joint account, then that is community property. But as far as those separate assets, it's going to be something that hopefully you're on notice about, that, hey, everything that I put in this is not mine. So
that's what I was going to add. You can tailor these prenuptial agreements. So you can say these items are obviously separate property. If I purchase property during my marriage, it's still separate. But you can also agree that some things will be community property, right? If we open this account, it will be considered community property. So there's a lot of things that you can do in a prenuptial agreement, and you can tailor it as much as you want. They're not standard.
Can you add on to it later after the marriage? So say, Sasha wants to buy a 10th house and her husband's not about it. Can she do that and then purchase it in it's her own, or how would that work?
Yeah, so we do post-nuptial agreements all the time. People always hear about prenuptials because it's so contentious, and you hear about, I guess, Hollywood actresses doing it and everything. But yeah, post-nuptials, just as good of an idea. It's not too late just because you already got married. At any point, you can kind of, I mean, if you have been in a marriage for 10 years, all of that is community property. If you didn't have a prenuptial, but you can start as of this day and say, hey, everything from this point on, this is how we're going to deal with it. And this is what, if we ever break up, what it's going to look like. And I definitely, I'm in the boat. I think maybe it's already clear I'm in the boat that everyone should do it. Really, I know it can be really contentious and really hard, but if you're thinking about spending the rest of your life with someone and making that kind of commitment and getting married, I think you should be able to have conversations about finances where, I mean, essentially all it is you're going to disclose all of your debts, disclose all of your assets, and then, make decisions about, if we were to separate. And I think we all have been in that kind of relationship where you have a really, maybe even naive kind of hope that it's never going to happen. But if you're just real with yourself, say, hey, if this were to happen, even if it's a 1 in 100 chance, what do I want that to look like? And then put it on paper and sign it. And then you never even have to think about it again, right? It's in a drawer somewhere. It's there if you need it. Peace of mind. But you move on with your life, everything's the same.
Well, that's great. I'd never even heard of a post-nuptial agreement. So that's great to know.
Now we know. Yeah, I wanted to ask Ify if there are.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Actually,
Sorry, I keep trying to jump in. I barely have a voice. I'm like, yes, I completely agree with you about it should just be standard. It makes estate planning so easy when people do it. It's like chef kiss. I love to see them. I know it's not popular to say that, but if you look at this whole industry of divorce, why not? I mean, most of these marriages are not working anyway. And so if you can do a pre or post nup, any kind of marital agreement makes it easy for when you want to give away property. One of the things that comes up is people are in blended families, and, you might want to take a second shot, in this new marriage, not disinherit your child. And these are the sorts of things that people do now, is to set up and say, I came in with this and I'm leaving with everything I came in, or I come in with this and then whatever we build is ours, but I don't want my kids not to have the ability to access other things. So they don't want to commingle accounts and make it very difficult because they've already been through a breakup. And so marital agreements, if you're setting up an estate plan, and if I could just do a very brief primer, an estate plan is not just a will, okay? And if you think of an estate plan as an umbrella, underneath it, there's a will, there are powers of attorney for medical and health decisions, there are health directives, there are things called trusts, there are documents for protecting your children and all of that. And when you're setting up an estate plan, marital agreements, whether pre or post-nuptial, are very helpful because part of it is distributing your assets. And if you have something that's already legally and it's contractually binding on the couple. And another thing I want to throw in, make sure both sides are represented by counsel, because if there are power imbalances, that can mess up the validity of a prenup, okay? And a lot of people be like, we're getting married, I'm fine, I'll sign anything. But you want to make sure that it's actually something that is well represented on both sides. But anyway, when you're dividing property, it's very easy to say, and reference the prenup or the postnup and say, this is the marital agreement dated on this date that says this, in order to back up how you're distributing assets in a will or a trust. So no one can go back and say it was community property, because we're still in Texas.
Yeah, Iffy, I couldn't agree with you more, because that's what I'm dealing with in terms of the clients stating that, hey, I have children. And I think that's the biggest thing in the transition of the divorce process is they haven't experienced it before, right? And having that trust going into a new relationship, they're like, wait, I want to protect my kids by all means necessary.
Absolutely.
What do I need to do? So that's great that you brought that up.
Yeah.
As they say, some famous writer said that all families are happy in the same way, but they are unhappy all in their own individual way. So we always, if we're mature enough to build this family, to be together, we should think about our own future, our kids' future, and our partner's future, because people think that bringing up a prenuptial agreement is this selfish act of self-defense. Well, it could be a selfless act of love when you say, well, I'm taking care of your future too. What if something happens to me? I want you to be comfortable. I don't want you to go through painful separation or something. So I think people should talk about more often, and not just hear about it in Hollywood movies and think, well, it's not for us. It's for those people who own millions of dollars. It's definitely not for regular families who actually love each other, because unfortunately divorces happen. And I wanted to ask a quick question to Deanna about the tax situation. So say people are getting married and they have their own lines of work. Someone might have a business, someone might be employed or unemployed. What's the best strategy when it comes to taxes? Should people start filing separately or jointly? What do you usually recommend?
Okay, so it just really depends on each client's unique situation, because every single client is different. So there's not a one size fits all approach. So when you own like one spouse owns a business and another spouse like earns income from a regular job, how the couple files taxes it just really depends. Let's say it depends on how the business is organized at the state level, and it also depends on their federal income tax election. So if the business owner, if they don't have an LLC, they're just a sole proprietor, then they'll file their taxes on their personal tax return, a Schedule C, and then a Schedule C is a part of the personal tax return. So if a couple, they have the choice to either file married filing jointly, or they can file married filing separately. But even if you file married filing separately, because Texas is a community property state, you still have to report each spouse's income on each tax return. You have to just split the income in half and report it on the spouse's tax return. So it really doesn't make, if you're a business owner that taxes as a sole proprietor, all of your income is reported on your personal tax anyway, and it doesn't really make a difference whether you file married filing jointly or married filing separately. I have seen some cases where some spouses decided to file married filing separately because one of the spouses has due tax debt or child support. So in that case, it might make sense to file married filing separately. But there's other tax elections where the taxpayer files a separate tax return, like a LLC that's taxed as an S corp. That's a totally separate tax return from your personal. So your tax return is not mixed in. Your business tax return is not mixed in with your spouse's income. But you want to consider the entire picture. Everything, is like is you want to consider your entire financial and your entire tax picture. Your business is a part of your tax strategy, but it's not the entire. It doesn't encompass your entire tax situation. So you want to see what makes sense for both spouses financially, because you can file married filing jointly or married filing separately, but there's not any tax benefits to filing married filing separately. You miss out on tax credits when you file married filing separately. Did that make sense?
So there are a lot of there are a lot of factors to consider, and I think if someone is not an expert in taxes, it's better to ask for advice. So
yeah, it's better to ask for
pick the
advice.
best.
Because I mean, what I'm giving you is general information, but even if so, you want to talk to like your own personal like tax advisor or accounting, because they know your entire situation and they can analyze like, you know, they know your spouse's income picture, your income picture. So you want to talk to someone where you can receive personalized advice about your particular tax situation, because everybody's tax situation is very different and there's not a one size fits all.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, you can just Google it and find one line that says this works for everyone. Just everyone's
You don't want to do it. You don't want to listen to people on Instagram. You want to listen to somebody that's going to file a tax return and sign it. So you want to get you don't want to go on Instagram or just Google. I mean, you might want to just Google just so you can have some
general knowledge.
It's like a overview.
Yeah. So you can have some education before you talk to your tax professional, because the educated clients, they get the best advice.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I think we just lost Victoria. I was about to ask her a question.
Too much pressure.
Oh, she's back.
There she is.
I share an internet connection with 2 other people working from home. So, you know, sometimes if we're all in meetings at once, it happens. Sorry about that.
You're good. Welcome back.
See, family.
Yes.
Complicated.
Yes.
I was actually to ask you a question, since we were talking about taxes and financial situation. What would be your general recommendations on starting your financial future together, like from the right start? Some painful mistakes to avoid. Should actually, once you get married, should you join your accounts and savings? Should you keep your finances separate? How do you go about this problem?
So that's a really, really great question. And I really like what Bianca and Marla said earlier. Start from the beginning. It should be something that you talk about from the very beginning to avoid awkwardness, to avoid potential problems later on, and decide how you are going to make your financial decisions. Are you going to make them together? Are there some you're going to make together and some you're not? Are you going to keep separate accounts? You know, and most people choose to. They have, you know, one family account and then they each have their own, is what I see more often. But it's really on a case-by-case basis. Everyone, when it comes to their finances, some people are a little more loosey-goosey and some people are really rigid and they're very, you know, straight-backed, like down to the point. And some people are just kind of like, you know, I want to make sure I'm doing the right things. And then everything else is kind of extra. So I would say that there aren't really many benefits to keeping accounts separate versus not, unless you start to get into more advanced planning considerations. But for normal everyday people, it's really just a matter of preference. If there are any more advanced planning questions, I'm happy to take them. But that's really where that comes down to. And then just kind of going through your snapshots. I think your potential spouse or your spouse should always know where your assets are, because if anything happens to you, then they're going to need to access those things. And that's where that estate plan really becomes very important. Yes. And if you said it perfect, it's really an umbrella, right? It shows where everything is and how it's all going to be treated. So I think that it's important to have that first conversation. You should both be at the table together. I can't emphasize enough that I have people who, you know, they want to set up a family planning kind of meeting and they're married, but only one spouse will come to the table. It's almost a waste of time at that point. I hate it to say it that way. The education is always good. The learning is always good. You can always do that on your own. But to have an effectual conversation, to actually create an implementation strategy, you need both decision makers at the table.
Absolutely.
So I would emphasize, you know, if if your spouse has someone they like to work with and you have someone you want to work with, bring them together. I've never, ever not had another financial planning professional who didn't want to sit at the table with me because they felt like they needed to be the only one in the conversation. So if they do behave that way, you should just leave them anyways, because that's not professional.
Victoria's not playing. She said,
Too territorial.
Well, no, it's more like the opposite, right? It's like
Yeah.
they shouldn't be territorial over their planning process, because essentially everything we all do is the same. We all play by the same rule books. We all play by the same laws. We all have essentially the same types of accounts that all get taxed the same way. So any financial planning professional, so I was saying, if you have one you want to work with and your spouse has one they want to work with, bring them together, right? Compromise. And just build a team together. I mean, that's even better. That's even better for you, because you have two minds working for you instead of one. So, and I have never had a joint planning professional that I worked with that I didn't get to learn something from. So that's great for me too, and great for them. So I hope I answered that question well.
Yeah, absolutely. Just asking more questions is better than not asking questions and assuming. So I think it's important, if you're joining your lives together, have the conversation, have a plan for, maybe you have different spending habits, maybe you have different dreams. And actually, I want to jump to the important question, the elephant in the room, owning a home. What if you don't have a home and you're a young couple and you want to become homeowners? And it's a difficult step, and there is a lot of there are a lot of misconceptions about mortgage loans and the finance. So I actually wanted to direct this question to Viviani and Sasha. And first, I want to ask: so, should I use my savings for my dream wedding, or should I use it as a down payment for my house? So I'm torn. I'm married already. I'm past the point.
well,
But some people are like, I want both. I want a house, but I also want a really fancy wedding somewhere in Hawaii. So what should I do?
There's a Netflix show on this very question, I think now.
Yes, I know.
yes.
Oh,
yes. And for me, I'm like, why can't you have it all, right? That's kind of what everyone likes to say. But I will say, over time, I think we gain knowledge, right? You have different perspectives on what you want your future to look like. And I want to say, within the last 6 years, it's been a great thing that society has kind of educated women to be smart. When I say smart, in a sense of, yes, you can have this dream wedding, but let's compromise and do it on a budget, because having assets, having a portfolio, I always say, I think there's a saying right now that says, I would like to give my future XYZ assets more than liabilities, right? So that's kind of like the shift that our society, in terms of a paradigm that has taken place. And I would say, yes, you can have your wedding, but think about it. The wedding, you are entertaining, I don't know, I'm just going to say 100 people, right? After you spend $20,000, those 100 people go away, you've accumulated this debt, when it could have easily, half of that, if not a third of that, could have gone into an investment of a property. Right. So it's just one of those things that asset will continue to be a gift that keeps on giving. Right. So you do have the choice. I'm not in any position to tell someone, hey, don't spend the 20K on a wedding, go all out. That is your day. I want it to be special. You enjoy that. Right. But I also want to shift your mindset to thinking, how can I capitalize on that money? Right. How can, if anything, have a wedding, ask for monetary gifts. Right. And that will help, one, to go towards that goal of a home ownership, or that can help go towards your deposit for your down payment. These are gifts. You can receive gifts for down payments. And these are things that you can consider or even put in the forefront. Hey, yes, we would love to have a beautiful wedding, but for our wedding gift, we would love monetary gifts to go towards our first home. people will be so receptive to that mindset. It was like, okay, wow, they got a plan. And it's always about having a plan. If people can see your vision, they will help and encourage you along the way. In terms of the home ownership, it's a beautiful thing. I always tell people, if you can have asset, get property. Get property. And I'm going to let Sasha kind of roll into that because I know this can go on.
Honestly, Vivi, you got it. You basically said everything that I was kind of trying to say when I was thinking about it. But and another thing, it also depends on like what stage of life you're in, right?
Exactly.
Like 20 something, and you know, all you want is this beautiful Instagram, Pinterest wedding, and that's all you ever wanted. You know, if you just take that money and then go and put it towards a home that, you know, it may not make you happy, right? So it's just kind of, you have to also think like what stage of life you're in. I mean, I had a beautiful wedding in California and it was extremely expensive and we were in debt from it, you know. And that was before I got my mortgage license, and you know, I was telling my husband like, oh my gosh, like, can you imagine we could have had, you know, but you can always play that game, ping pong game back and forth, right? Like it's so personal, like, and that's why there's a Netflix show, right? Sometimes I'm watching this, they better, you know, pick a house. I mean, that is so dumb. They're gonna spend all that money in just one day and then it's gone. And then I'm thinking back to my, you know, 28-year-old self and planning the wedding, you know, of my dreams. And I'm like, oh, but it made me so happy. And every time I see that video, you know, my husband and I always watch that video, wedding video on every, you know, our anniversary. It's like, it's worth every penny. You know, it's
Exactly.
probably not the answer that you guys expected from works with investors.
Devil's advocate.
But honestly, it's extremely personal, and I've had clients who done both. You know, they were lucky enough to have some family help, and I can get into that whole topic about how much you can put down, and I'm sure Vivi knows, right? You can literally put down as low as 5%, and you can get co-signers on your mortgage, and you can make it happen. You know, and if you have your budget wedding, or you can budget it towards having both. And I've had a few couples who've had both. So it's not a black or white answer.
It is not. And it's personal. You
Again,
said that.
I can't just Google and find my answer. You know, you can do it.
No,
I
you
hope
can't just
that I will come
ask
out
the
with a
magic
list of-
8-ball, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to put some thought and make some decisions. It's got to be, you have to make the choice. Nothing's going to do it for you.
And that's about having a conversation too, right? That's not just, say, for instance, that's just not on the bride or the groom. You have to think about this together because, again, this is a decision that's going to impact the both of you, right? So it's always back to what you were saying, Victoria. It's a team effort. If one is there on one page versus the other, like, oh, I want this dream wedding. The other partner is like, let's establish some asset. Then you guys need to really get at the table and really lay out your vision for what your future looks like.
100%.
We have a question from our audience. So the question is, please discuss estate planning on how to ensure if you live with a parent who has house and mortgage in their name upon death, how do you make sure you can keep the house upon death? It's probably
This is a great question. I do this every day. So the fundamental thing I'm going to say as a baseline is that if you are 18 years old and you're able to make decisions, which means even though Brittany's not under a conservatorship, guardianship in Texas, that's what we call it. If you're not under that condition, you need an estate plan. And so one of the things with estate planning is that for so long, so many of us, especially women of color and women, have been outside the system because we were considered property historically, right? Which means that your father gave you to your husband and under a system called coverture. That's how we go into the system. This is why it's not normal for us to have family members that have estate plans. It's not normal that women are talking about estate planning. This tide is shifting. When it comes to the context of your parent right? Who many of us are on the precipice of a generational shift, right? We have baby boomers, they're going to start dying. They're living forever, but they will. And so there's a huge property transfer that's going to happen. If you don't have an estate plan, every single state has a plan for what to do with your assets because we have something called intestacy laws, and that governs how your property is passed on. And that applies to whatever anybody owns. In order to pass it on, you either have a will or trust to give you guidance or nothing. And so you follow the state's guideline. So for this person, and I'm just going to answer it generally, who has a parent and my goodness, I want to help. I want to make sure, well, it seems like they want to make sure that asset is transferred to them, not hating, but they want to make sure that that asset is transferred to them. The best thing to do is to ask that parent, do you have an estate plan? Because if they want to have that house go to whomever, that can be arranged, right? That can be legally put down. Other ways that people transfer property, there's something called joint tenancy with a right of survivorship. That means like if you have two people on a deed, if one of them dies, the other person automatically inherits that. However, a lot of people think I should just add my son or my daughter or my family member on this deed and transfer it while I'm alive. So we're both on it. That is not necessarily the best thing to do because there are things that you can take advantage of if you transfer assets, even if it's a deed transfer that's on death. And so these are they seem simple, but they're complex because they have to do with how much is that house worth, what's the estate, tax consequences. This underlines the importance of having conversations. Someone mentioned the importance of a team. You need to talk to a tax professional, CPA, about step up in basis is something that when people transfer assets, there are some tax consequences and tax benefits depending on how you do it. And so there are so many things to have people just generally look at when it comes to the transfer of property. It's not the Google, yes, do a transfer on death deed. Okay, do a ladybird deed. These are all deeds that are available for transferring assets, but they may not be the best one for your situation. Right. Yeah. And so just to go back to the question, how do you ensure? Go to get your estate planning done. Go with your parent and encourage them, if they haven't done it, to get their estate planning done. Talk to your financial planner and your tax professional and the estate planning attorney to see what the best way, based on your circumstance, would be to transfer the asset or assets, which is what you look at. Sometimes people have multiple properties, right? And no plan. Yeah. And so when they die, it's a mess. But we get hired either way. So we can do it while you're alive, or we can do it when you die. Either way, you're losing money. You're losing money to taxes potentially. And so I think the baseline is just to get the estate plan and also have the conversations with key people in your life. You're not rushing them to an early grave, but you're asking them things like, what do you want your legacy to be? How do you want your grandkids to remember you? Yeah. Have these conversations as Thanksgiving and Christmas are coming up, or the holidays, Hanukkah, whatever you celebrate. These are the times to have these conversations because 70% of Americans don't have an estate plan, which means that there's a big mess coming if people don't start normalizing how they're going to transfer assets.
I couldn't agree more.
And I love you so much, Iffy.
I'll be contacting you.
Yes. I was just going to ask, do you have kind of a concept of what the time commitment is? Because I feel like some people think of estate planning and they think oh, this is going to be, going through a divorce or something, which is 60 days at least, right? But estate planning does not have to be, as complicated as people are thinking.
It's not like a divorce at all. In fact, it's wonderful. I think people have the idea that, number one, you have to be rich. You have to have a marriage. You have to have children. You have to be old. You have to have a lot of assets. So any excuse, yes, that is a common excuse. But I think the beauty of estate planning is if you're coming to it and you're coming to it informed, you're getting to make decisions. So it's not a contentious, it's not like your spouse no longer wants to be with you and your kids are going to be thrown into this disarray. You're still able to make decisions. And so depending on who your attorney is, they're going to have a different method. Our goal is to get people out in 8 weeks, only because there's a lot of collecting of data. We need all of your financial information. But if you work with a financial planner like Victoria, you can have that done for you, right? And so a lot of it is just scheduling and having meetings to talk about it, because we don't just fill out forms. That's why I hate LegalZoom and Rocket Lawyer and people who pull forms at the library. They're not executed well. Sometimes they're challenged often in court. But if you're serious about walking through, it's an investment in your time and money to do so. But it doesn't have to be drawn out, and it can be very pleasant. We're a very wonderful team. We love working with people, women, empowering them, bringing in their spouses, their children, to make sure that we plan it for them. And in my office, we say, when you start, we have our first meeting within 2 weeks, so you can gather all the information, and we call and text and email and say, hey, our meeting's coming up. And then we review the documents after we prepare them. And then all it is come in and sign, to our office, and come get your document executed, which is just to get it signed. And so the process, the way we like to do it, we like to calendar you so you know your dates, and we can work around your schedule. But other than that, the process should be such that your hand is held through it, and you don't feel like you don't understand what you're signing, and that you have an explanation, but you're not going to law school in order to get your plan in order. And so different lawyers do it in different ways. We are very much like hands-on. Some people are very much like fill out a form. Find the person that aligns best with you and your values, and go to that kind of person to do it. But no, there is an investment in time. It's not just filling out something and then you're done, because I would argue that that's not adequate, right? And then the other thing I'll add for estate plan, it is not a one and done. I think people pay for it and they're like, they're like, oh, thank you, it's off my list. But you might get divorced. Your spouse might die. Your kid might become an adult. There might be someone you have a falling out with that was a key player in your estate plan as far as making decisions if you're not able to. And so it's something you need to look at. Tax laws change, okay? Right now we have a huge federal estate tax of $11.7 million for this year. That's going to change by 2026. And so those are the reasons that you need to come back and have everything looked at and know that this still works for our family. This still works for me, my business, etc.
Now, I will piggyback, Iffy. You mentioned something, and I'm in the business of education, right? Outside of just providing mortgage knowledge, overall, I want my clients to understand it is a journey. I'm not transactional by any means.
Absolutely.
I want to see that you are, one, being educated on the knowledge that you have and how I can help you grow generational wealth moving forward.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned something, and I think when people think about event planning, or not event, but estate planning, they automatically think they have to have these titles in order to execute on that planning. You can be single and have an estate planning. You don't necessarily have to have children. You don't necessarily have to have a spouse. And that's one of the things that I try to encourage a lot of women to kind of lean towards, that, and just having the knowledge, right? Because again, there's so many questions behind it, but if you don't ask, you'll never know. And I believe in building a team and providing, serving as a resource of having a database of individuals that can help them in that journey. So I'm so glad that, I have the opportunity to be on this panel. So I have so many references right now.
And I just wanted to add again, you can have a ton of debt. Okay. Exactly. I want everyone to feel included. You can be broke as a joke and you still need an estate plan. You need something to talk about asset distributions. You look around your house, there's art, there's all kinds of tchotchkes. Who's going to deal with that stuff? Your laptop, your car. You can be renting and have an estate plan. And the key is to really let that sink into you and let you know, like, you need one. Everyone on this panel needs an estate plan, because if you don't have one, the state decides when there's an emergency that has nothing to do with how much money you have in the bank. You have healthcare issues. We're all living longer, so a lot of estate planning is incapacity planning. Who do you want to help you if you're incapacitated? Do you want a medical board to make a decision? Do you want your parents to fight over what should happen and have a falling out between siblings about what you would want? Document all those things. That's all considered part of your estate plan as well.
I think that's the biggest issue, is that everyone thinks it's such a daunting process, even with divorce.
Yes.
I think that if you even have those questions, you should just talk to an attorney, set up a
Yes.
consultation, and
Yes.
just have a 1 hour. I just have these questions. I want to know the answers and have a sit down.
Absolutely.
Anyone that you pick up the phone and call, I mean, now we do even Zoom consultations. So there's no excuse to not meet with an attorney over these
Yes.
issues.
Yeah, just have a 1 hour. Don't even commit.
Yeah.
Just have someone professional answer your questions. It's worth the investment.
It is truly. I always say invest on the front end, because the back end, baby, that's
Wow.
where you're going to spend the most money, because you didn't ask the right questions.
Yeah.
You didn't take the time out. And, you know, they always say knowledge is power, but it's truly that. I know it's cliche to say, but I stand on it, and I try to encourage it all the time.
Yeah.
I was just going to add.
And I think as
because
women,
so many people say,
oh, sure. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Marla?
I was just going to add real
Yes.
quick, Iffy, just to all of your point from real estate perspective. As realtors, I actually have never dealt with a property that's an estate sale, but every time I see one on MLS and speaking with other realtors, it's like, oh, it's an estate sale. Oh, that means it's gonna take forever to close. You know? That's just something to think about, right?
Yes.
Like, as you know, it's a crazy market, you know, and it's been a crazy market for a while now. But I have clients who are seeing this estate sale, and it's probably a lot of the times it's either abandoned or it's just not taken care of, and my clients want a deal.
Family is fighting. There's usually family fighting, and they have to sell to split up the assets. So you're losing generational wealth because whoever died didn't have a plan.
Absolutely. And it's much harder to sell that type of property too, even in the hot market. So that's just something to add, you know, to keep in mind from real estate perspective. So I just wanted to add that.
And I was just going to say, you know, we're in a panel full of professional women who are in different spheres of influence, right? This is part of what we do, is in educating our clients, but it's also in making this a norm to when you don't know something, don't just stop at Google, but go find the answer. We're all capable. We've all reached this level of success, of ownership of a business or influence in your profession, that it should be just considered a norm to invest in answers that, you know, it's great to crowdsource, but it's also wonderful if I know I have a sticky tax issue that I can go talk to a tax strategist and say, should I set up my business like this? Do I need a holding company? What about how I pay myself? Can my kids get this tax credit if I put them in my marketing? I don't know. I do estate planning. I don't know anything about taxes, but if you tell me this is what I need to do and why, you better believe I'm doing it. And I just want to, like, for anyone who's listening, really take ownership and agency over the ability to make these sorts of decisions. If you don't know about something, don't just be like, it's not for me. I don't think it's my time. Go learn about it. Go figure out how to get the answer from someone who does that.
Yeah.
And other people are doing it. You know, I think there's so much stigma around a lot of this stuff that people think, oh, it's not for me, and nobody that I know is doing it. And that's just not true. Everybody else is doing it, and they're not talking about it because nobody brags on Pinterest about, like, oh, I went to go plan out my debt and how I'm going to pay it. Nobody says, oh, I went for my mom. You know, nobody talks about it, but they are doing it. The successful people are going and planning and doing this and having these thoughts. And everyone else needs to be doing it too, even if you historically have thought, you know, like, oh, my parents,
it's not for me.
You know, but it is definitely, it's for you, it's your family, it's for, you know, if you want to get to this level that everyone else is at, that's kind of what you have to do. But yeah, I mean, and I see that more, you know, with a lot of the tax and estate planning than divorce, but having just your own, you know, we were talking about having separate accounts, even planning for that amount of money, you know, your own separate property, it can make a huge difference later on. And people maybe aren't talking about it to you, you know, the finances, it's still kind of a lot of stigma about talking about religion and finances and stuff out in public, but people are thinking about it more so than ever, and they are planning.
I have a friend who he's in Atlanta, but he's starting an entire national prenup.com. He just got that. because it is so common, but still so stigmatized. But best believe when you hear people and you see them buying multiple properties and investing in like office buildings, and you're like, what are they doing? There is an undercurrent of things that people do, but it's still considered financial taboo to speak about when it comes to tax strategies, money strategies, how to move money around. You know, you hear people like Trump say he pays only $750 in taxes, and people are like aghast. But as an estate planner, I'm like, he's got a really good tax strategist. You know, like in my mind, his CPA is doing some magic in the background. I don't know if it's all legal, but there's something happening for him to say that with pride. And there are a certain level of people who understand that. And to them, that's not shameful. That's smart, right? And so even question some of the things that you think of that are just not for you, and figure out what are some of the things other people are doing, because they're out there. It's just not as sexy as saying, oh, I paid off debt, or I bought a new house or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no one
Yeah,
goes
it's
out
not
and says,
negative
guys, I filed my estate plan today. Look what I did today.
They need to. I'm going to start a movement. I just thought about it.
Yes.
Like,
People
we
need
need to
to.
be like, I got my estate plan, and make that normal. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
we
should be
need social
normalized.
media icons like
Absolutely.
I got vaccinated.
Exactly. I got my estate plan.
Yes, like a
Yeah.
little Facebook
And, yeah,
filter,
it's
you
not-
know, around your
Sticker.
face.
Absolutely. Great idea.
Yeah, because it's not negative thinking about divorce, thinking about death or disability, or what if something goes wrong? Because we're like, oh, why are you thinking about the worst case scenario? Do you want to project it to happen to a family? Of course not. But unfortunately, I don't know a family where they didn't have an accidental death or disability or some tax issues or a divorce, unfortunately. So maybe you'll be lucky. I want to see that person who did their estate plan, their will, their tax strategy, and then they're dying at the 120 years old, and they're like, well, I didn't need any of that. I'm so lucky.
Absolutely.
I never
Yes.
had to. Like, I want to see that person. Unfortunately, we haven't met one. And now that we talked
They're
a
out
lot
there.
about
They
responsibility,
are out there.
yeah, come out and raise your
They're
hand.
just relaxing. They're just relaxing. They're not
They're
freaking
enjoying
out about
life.
anything because everything's taken care of. Yeah.
They're planning their dream wedding. And let's talk more about children, because we went through getting married and planning everything in a new family. What if we have minor children, and it can be children that we made together or children who were brought to this marriage by either side? What are the important legal, financial, tax, or property ownership steps or mistakes that people make all the time that people should be aware of? And I'd like just to start, I know people don't need pushing here. Everyone is ready to jump in, but let's start with Marla.
Oh, for tax things or for just regular?
No, legal, financial, any kind of consideration that needs to be on your radar when you.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things that a prenup can't do or a postnup too, they can't, because this is a common misconception, you can't agree to like a lot of that custody stuff, right? Like that's the standard is always going to be what's in the best interest of the child. So it's kind of going to be, we have some very standard, visitation and standard guideline child support stuff. As far as tax stuff, I mean, that would be actually a really great question that I would have for some of our tax specialists. Is I all the time have people that come and they're going through a divorce and they want to know who can claim the kids on their taxes. And I know the law is like whoever had the child, 50% more or more than 50% for that year. But that's hard to write into a decree, right? Like, I mean, we can put something in there that says, we have to make sure that this one person has the child, at least 50% or more than 50% so that they can, claim on their taxes. But it's kind of hard to write in a decree who gets the right to claim the child on their taxes, because that's tax law and we can't touch that and we can't contract around that. I think there is kind of some, I guess, like a form that I've heard of that one parent can fill out, like allowing the other parent to claim. Maybe someone can talk more about that, because I know that's been one of our challenges, is kind of now that a lot of people are moving towards those 50-50 agreements. It used to be so straightforward that, a lot of times one spouse just had every other weekend and it was very clear that the other spouse or ex-spouse would have the kids, on their taxes. But now we're getting into a lot of those gray areas where it's kind of unclear who should get to claim them. And a lot of people that want to alternate, 1 year I claim them, 1 year I don't, or even I claim one kid, you claim one kid. I'd like to hear some of the creative tax strategies we've had for that, because it's out of our realm a lot of times, is giving any kind of tax advice. So.
Okay. Okay. So I can speak to that. So I had encountered many cases like that. So in most cases, when there's a divorce and we're deciding on who gets the right to claim the child, the first place we go to is the divorce decree. So the divorce decree gives this one parent permission to claim the child on their tax return. That's the first place we go to. If the divorce decree does not address that as all, we go to the IRS law. The divorce decree proceeds whatever what the IRS says. The IRS will accept the divorce decree in that situation. But so it's usually it's the parent, not usual. It's the parent that has the child at least 50% of the time. So you have situations where both parents might have the children 50% of the time because they have a split custody arrangement. So in those cases, it's the parent with the highest adjusted gross income that gets to claim the child. So it's either we go by the divorce decree, who has the child 50% or more, who has the highest adjusted gross income. There could be situations where both parents are eligible to get a tax credit for the child. One parent can claim the child on their tax return as a dependent, and then the other one can claim the person on their child. They wouldn't claim. They can claim the person on their child, not the person. I'm sorry, I'm like talking so fast, like really easily. Okay, so let me slow down. So in situations where both parents want to get a tax credit for the child, I had a client recently that had paid like large amounts of childcare for her daughter, but she did not have her daughter 50% of the time. And then the divorce decree that the father gets to claim the child. So in that case, we were still able to she was still able to claim the child and get the head of the household tax status, and that saved her like a tremendous amount of money on tax savings. So while she didn't get to claim the child as a dependent and she didn't get to write off her child care expenses, she was still able to claim the child as head of the household and save some money on taxes.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting.
Are there any tax considerations for if you're not divorced and you just had a baby? Does it affect your tax situation immediately? Is there something automatic that comes into play, or do you need to take steps to strategize around that?
Okay, so you're saying, so you're married. You just recently got married.
Yeah,
right?
and you, so for example, you got married and now you have a baby. Does it affect your tax situation?
Yes, it does affect your tax situation. So now that you're married with a child, you get special tax credits. The child tax credit is one big tax credit for taxpayers with children. You can be single, or you can also, you can be married. And they just recently, the IRS recently started giving out advanced tax credit. So some parents are receiving their a portion of their tax credit ahead of time, instead of waiting for like the end of the year when they file their taxes. They can get that money, that child tax credit money monthly, and that's gonna be like $250 to $300 per child. So that's a big tax perk. Another
does that have an end date, or the advanced child credit?
Yeah, it has an end date of, I believe, December, unless they extend it. Yeah, so the IRS has been like changing the tax law continuously all of like 2020, all of 2021. So there's always like so many different changes, especially like after COVID happened. That usually doesn't happen. Like the tax law only usually changes like maybe, the biggest tax law we saw was the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. But since the COVID, the tax law just changes like all the time. So, but yeah, for now it's until December, but they may also change it. So yeah, so you can claim the child tax credit. If you pay for any child care for the child, you can claim a credit for child care. Depending on your income, if you're under a certain income threshold, you may qualify for the earned income credit for your new baby. So there are some really big tax credits when you do have a baby. The lower your income, the more tax credits you qualify for. In most cases.
We've had some issues with the advanced child credit, dividing that upon divorce, and then the stimulus money, where it was deposited. And,
yeah,
it
was
so
really mess. It was like a real mess because the IRS, they just didn't like a plan for that, and then it was just like a really mess. It was a big mess. So yes.
I think it's still a big issue because people who try to get in contact with IRS, I heard people saying that they have to be on the phone for like 6 hours waiting on the line, and it's just insane. So it's not so easy to DIY if you have a question. You can't be like, just call and ask.
You can be on hold for the IRS for like 5 hours, and finally you get a representative, and then they hang up on you. And I have a practitioner hotline that I can call, and I can get faster access to the IRS. Like I could still be on hold for like an hour, but it's better than waiting on hold for like 5 hours and getting hung up on and having to call the next day, and same thing just happening over and over again. The IRS is tremendously backlogged and behind.
Yeah, I'm slightly concerned that it's going to be this year, when people file for their taxes, they're expecting that huge tax credit for their children. And maybe if they've been getting those small payments every month, it's going to be lower than what they thought, which I think, is something that's going to affect a lot of families and then also affect us because, I know I have a lot of clients who are, waiting to file a modification to their custody, or they're waiting to get divorced until they get that influx of money from their tax refund. And I'm worried that a lot of people are going to find out it's not as much this year as they thought because they've been getting money throughout the year.
Yes. So one good thing is they increased the child tax credit. So it's increased from what it was last year. So they may still be able to get some refund, but it could, it could be reduced. And it's really a mess because the IRS can also so there was a issue where the IRS was sending stimulus payments to dead people. They were sending stimulus payments to dead people. Some people that may not even be eligible for the child tax credit. The IRS could messed up and sent those people child tax credit. So it's just not.
So they will get affected like in the back end, right? Like will IRS acknowledge that, especially the ones who are not deceased, the ones who received it and cashed it? Is that something that's going to affect them when they file taxes?
Yes.
I'm sure.
Yeah, knowingly cash that check, knowing that you should not have received it. Yeah, I hope you saved it.
How do I get some of that dead people money? You
don't want it, Marla. You don't want
it. You do not want that.
I have a question for Victoria because I have a baby. A lot of people have kids, and they're wondering, well, someday I hope my kid will have a good future. I might want to send him or her to college, or maybe just set aside some money for them to feel protected. What's the best strategy around that? If you want to secure a good financial future for your child, regardless of what happens to you, and that will also be a question for Ify, what should we do?
So I'll start off by saying that I think a lot of times I'll talk to parents, and they're so focused on setting their specific child or children up for success that they skip over making sure that things are taken care of for themselves first. And I think it's very important when you're creating a financial plan for your children that you make sure that your foundation is solid first, because if something happens to you, that planning you did for that child is going to disappear. So if you haven't done those things already, make sure to take care of those first, making sure that your income is protected. If you get disabled or if you have an accident, right? Making sure that you have those disability insurances, accidental death and dismember insurances in place. And we're very lucky that many decent employers, I'd say decent, offer disability insurance, right? And making sure that you have that 3 to 6 months of savings in your account. If something happens, that you're able to fund all of the bills, the mortgage, everything that you've been trying to make sure stays in place. Life insurance as well. Life insurance is a very important thing for parents to have. And one of my big reasons why I got into financial planning is because I lost more than half my family before my 25th birthday. And as a young person, I've had to probate 2 estates. It is not fun, y'all. And if he is like, no, it's not, because you don't want to have to do that. And that's where that estate plan comes into play. So I would say if you don't have those things taken care of for yourself first, make sure that those things are in place and then add on for the kids. And then for the kids, I mean, there's all kinds of great planning tools that are out there. There's 529 accounts, which if you don't know what that is, it is a college savings plan that gives you a tax incentive. So the money that goes into it is on a pre-tax basis. So you get a tax deduction. And it also grows tax deferred during the child's life before they start to need it. And you can invest it. It's not just, some savings account where you put it in and it gets some nominal 0.5% rate of return that inflation's eating against every year. You can actually invest it in a meaningful way that makes sense for the child and for their needs and their timeline and their lifetime. And then, there's also high yield savings accounts that you can utilize as well. And then in some cases, it really just depends on the financial situation of the family. But there's also types of permanent life insurance policies that you can take out for kids as well. And they also have a lot of really nice tax benefits. So that's kind of in a nutshell the advice that I would give. And then really, it's just very tailor-made. You have to sit down, go through your specific situation and see what makes sense for those kiddos and yourself.
Mm-hmm. And also a little bit, I'll just add a little question and then we can continue. Should people start saving or investing maybe if they still have debt? If it's college debt, if it's maybe back taxes, credit card debt, are we in a position to try to accrue more wealth if we are behind somewhere else? And that's a question to everyone too. And Victoria.
So I'll make a quick note on that really fast, and then I'd love to hear what everyone else has to say. So it really depends on what your debt load is, how much you're in debt, what are your interest rates on that debt, because that all is a factor. I am kind of in the wheelhouse, the philosophical wheelhouse of if you only ever try to pay off your debt, you're always just going to be putting money in someone else's pocket. So I think there's a balance to be found between investing for the future and also working your debt off. I think there's a balance to be found there, but it's really dependent on your personal situation and your personal goals.
And if I could jump in on this, I love this question. I think that, yes, I completely agree with everything Victoria just said. I also think that it is important that we start looking at debt differently. We had that whole Dave Ramsey model for so long where there's so much shame associated with any debt, but we have mortgages and school loans and they're exempt, right? Because you got to go to school, you got to live somewhere. But I think if we take away the stigma and really look at our personal situations, I know years ago, over 10 years ago, I did that Financial Peace University because I thought, I need to get out of debt. It's so bad. It's so bad. But my job was I used to work for a company that doubled your match up to 10%. You put in 5 and they gave you 10. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not on the stage where I should be saving for retirement, but I know a good thing when I see it. And so I think use your common sense. That account now is worth over $200,000. And I wouldn't even still be at that stage because if I'm still paying off my debt, which I am, right? And my husband has his too, right? We're still paying off our debts. We shouldn't have any retirement yet because we're just too broke, right? So that's the importance of working with a financial planner to know what your goals are long-term for your family, for your children, for yourself, not what some person says that you need to be doing. And if I could just speak a little bit more about the estate planning for your children, this is the number one thing that brings people to my office. I'm a mom of 4 kids. My oldest is 8, my youngest is 1. So I'm like in the trenches, y'all, with this stuff too. And one of our biggest fears is what would happen to our kids? If something happened to me, to my spouse, what happens to them? How do I make sure they get the house? How do I make sure that they get all these things that I'm building for them? It's very important to know that children are not able to inherit property without a custodian if they're under the age of 18. And so what you find a lot of people doing is inadvertently disinheriting their children because they have not planned for them. Additionally, it's not a given that if something happens to you that your mom or your sister's going to get the kids. If you don't put down any sort of guardianship designations to inform a court, God forbid you're in that situation, that's not the outcome that's guaranteed, right? And so there's certain things that you have to confront, and that is the scenario of you not being there. And what then? And that's what estate planning allows you to do, is to plan for that, to set up a trust. You can put a trust is a way to manage assets for a person. For minors, you can set up trusts within your will, or even better, in a living trust, which is something you can manage while you're alive. It can be in an income-bearing account. It can be in a money market account. And that money can be used for your entire family, for your kids, for you if you're incapacitated, for your health, education, maintenance, and support. That's the standard under the law. Additionally, life insurance, which I don't even sell, but I just bought $1.5 million more of, on top of another $1 million, because I got 4 kids. What would happen if something happened to them? My husband and I both carry a lot of life insurance because guess what? Not everyone's working that hard to build generational wealth. People are buying insurance. Okay, they're not that gifted and that strong and hustling mentality, right? There are insurance products that you can use as part of your wealth building portfolio. And then you can use that in conjunction with your estate plan to fund your trust. You don't necessarily have to make $1 million. You can buy $1 million. And that takes the mentality that you're actually building it for the future, not necessarily how you are now. And that's regardless of your school loans and regardless of your house debt. That's forward thinking. And so that's what's really important, is when you think of your kids, think of them today. If something were to happen to you tomorrow, have you planned for that? And if not, why? Why isn't that a priority in addition to building your business and building your portfolio and building your wealth in real estate? Why isn't the fact that there's no plan for them something that bothers you? And can I just give one tip? I had a friend, and this has also happened to my cousin who passed away in her early 40s. They left life insurance to minor children.
That's the
That
part
is
I was just getting ready to say. Thank you.
cannot receive it. You have to go through
because they
probate.
had.
Yes. So who's going to hire the attorney and pay for all of that? And in the meantime, that check could be cut in a day, and that money could be in the trust account in a day, right? If you set it up right. You cannot leave life insurance to minors. They cannot
It has to be
receive it.
through the trust. And that's
Yes.
the part that I was getting ready to piggyback on, but you
Yes.
nailed it. You were on time, because
It's
I try to stress
huge.
that enough. Find someone that you trust, have them as the trustee, and they can delegate the money to the children. Because
According to your wishes.
To your
Right.
wishes, yes. And you have that in place with your attorney, with your financial advisor, with your team. I can't stress the team part enough, because it's crucial in planning.
And also, this will be the last thing I say on this. Do not leave life insurance to somebody else in order for them to take care of your child. My friend had her mother pass away while she was a minor. Her mom left her life insurance to her sister, the aunt. The aunt passed away. Guess what happened? She's disinherited, because that money follows whoever you give it to. It's not a guarantee that you give money to someone and they take care of your children, because you're just giving money to them. And if they die, even if they're wonderful, what if they die? What then happens to that asset? It follows their estate. They have no estate plan. You're giving it to other people. So just don't avoid these things, because the effects can be so devastating. And you see examples of it all around us.
Yeah, I think that is an issue that came up in one of my cases recently, is nobody wants to have a life insurance policy that benefits, their kids, and leave it to the spouse that they just divorced, right? They're going to think, oh, that woman's going to go spend it all on herself. She's not even going to spend it on the kids. I want to leave it to my children. But yeah, we ran into the same issue that you referred to, where, you can't leave it to minor children. So it does, I guess it sounds like it becomes an issue where you're just going to have a trust, because you don't want to, like you said, give it to a sister or a relative.
Yes, that's the answer.
Kind of the option. Yeah.
Yeah.
So everybody go update their beneficiaries.
Yeah.
Well, you can update
Open
it.
the trust and update the
first.
beneficiary. Yeah.
Second.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I would say, Marla, I love working with divorce attorneys because there's a plan. There's something we can do when you get through that divorce and you want to set up everything differently. There's a way to do that. And so it's one of those things when post-divorce, people can make sure they've changed all those things so that it still works for their new life situation, so that when they pass away, they won't be like one of my probate clients whose ex-wife got his life insurance because he never updated it. It was an ERISA plan. You can't make them, regardless of your divorce decree, which said everybody leaves with what they came in, that plan was not covered under Texas law. And so there are all these nuances and things that I have personally seen. And he died and he was 31. Right. And so his parents are my client. I'm not talking about old people. My clients are all my age. I turn 40 next month. All my clients are my age and my age range. These things are actually happening to people who are our age and younger. So sorry, I get very passionate about it because these are like,
and that's good.
It's so important.
I was actually going to just add one thing that I heard on a podcast. If you own a business and you have a partner, maybe if you have the ability to take out a second insurance policy, naming your partner as a beneficiary. So that way, if there's any debts or anything like that, it can be paid out of those proceeds and not affect your family. So taking it one step further. And so I thought that was awesome. I was like, man, that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
There are so many options that people don't even know about because they're not curious. And you want your protection, your love to go beyond your marriage, beyond your life, beyond your family's life. You want it to be with your kids or with your loved ones, even when something happens to you. I think that's it's not negative thinking. It's the ultimate expression of love and care.
I think it's worth saying that it should be part of any operating agreement that has more than one owner, that both owners have X amount of life insurance and that it stays in force. It should be part of the operating agreement. It's a huge pitfall that we have in business planning. So, and also, how does ownership transfer? Is the family going to continue running this business that they know nothing about? Because if your spouse is a nurse and you're running a real estate company, how is your nursing spouse supposed to be one half of a real estate company? So buy-sell agreements are a huge part of what we do in the business planning arena.
And business succession planning is huge for all you business owners who are listening.
Yeah.
What happens if you are incapacitated and when you die? Is there a winding up provision in there? Do you have key man or key person insurance policies? Do you have a buy-sell agreement? Your wife or spouse who might stay at home may want nothing to do with your partnership. And so what does your operating agreement say about how it ends? A lot of people want to say, oh, in my will, I'll just say it goes to this. But that's not how it works. There's an entirely different process. You can assign your LLC assets to your trust. It's so complicated how these things can end up and what happens when people, they build multi-million-dollar businesses and don't plan at all for them. And then they pass away and it's a mess. It's a mess because there might be key employees involved, business partners, investors. All of these things have to be planned for. And there are ways to do that while the only way to do it is while you're alive, let's be real. But while you're alive and competent. So if you're a business owner and you have no idea what I'm talking about, that is a red flag because someone has to wind up your business. And it's not only death, it's incapacitation planning too.
Yep.
Thank you. We unfortunately are running out of time, and we didn't even touch upon actually going through divorce or retirement. But I'm sure that if you're going through any of this, you should act now. And if we scared you, it's good. I hope we scared you into a fight or flight situation where you either fight for your future or you run towards the expert and ask them the right question. Don't hide from it. Don't avoid it. We'll just have maybe a minute for everyone to share their final thoughts and the last piece of advice for everyone for today before we wrap up. Let's start with Marla.
Yeah, so I didn't have anything prepared, but I definitely feel like the common thread of, what everyone is saying is just, spending some time to think about it, even though it's a pain, right? So just actually not getting complacent, not just going about your normal day-to-day routine and just thinking, I'll deal with it later, I'll deal with it later. Really thinking right now, what would happen if I were to get divorced or I were to, suffer some kind of accident where I'm disabled or die, God forbid, what is going to happen? And just really forcing yourself to kind of think about that and face that reality and just know that, you can go talk to somebody. All of us are super nice. I mean, we love to help people. That's probably why we've gotten into most of these careers. We especially love, to help women. To me, the worst kind of cases I get are, a woman that is getting divorced and she has, oftentimes financially abused, right? And doesn't have a job of her own and has not, even developed relationships with other people that can help her out of this situation. You want to be thinking, worst case scenario, where can I go to keep me and my kids safe? What kind of assets could I, access and sell off, whether it's just a separate savings account that even sits there for emergencies, something like that. Just have some kind of plan that if everything were to go tails up, you have something that you can look at and say, hey, I feel comfortable that I could take care of myself and my kids, and we're not going to be living on the street or anything like that. So that's my, I guess, 2-minute spiel about what maybe the best option is that it sounds like we're all kind of recommending. But I was super great to meet all of y'all, and I'm so glad to have been a part of it. Thank you so much, Olga, and I'm sure that I'll be around at other Austin businesswomen events, so say hi. If you have any questions, anyone on this panel or anyone listening, definitely email me. I'm marla@azfirm.law. And you can also just Google my name, and we should have a website out there where you can send a message or whatever, give us a call. But thanks so much again.
Thank you.
Talk to you later.
Bianca.
I think I would say the same thing, honestly. Just harping on, you have to have those discussions with yourself before you can actually have that discussion with your partner. And so sitting down and writing it, and as cliche as they say, just take that time, write it out, journal it, think about everything that could go wrong and figure out a solution. Write the questions that you have that you cannot find on Google or that you need more information to, and just making a plan to set up consultations with any one of these lovely ladies that are here and asking those questions so that you can better prepare yourself for what's to come, what's definitely, going to happen. So that's what I would say.
Okay.
Thank you. Deanna.
So I would say just be very intentional about creating a financial plan for your family, and also you want to keep really good records. If he had mentioned about the estate planning, the tax consequences when you transfer a home to a family member. So part of that, like determining the basis, you want to have your tax return. You need to have copies of your tax returns, and that would help you in determining the basis. So you won't have to pay extra. You don't have to pay unnecessary taxes. So just keep them really when you're investing, it's really important to have really good bookkeeping and keep really good records and have everything in order, and to have conversations with your spouse and your children so they can care, if something happened to you, they'll be able to, know where to find your life insurance documents, know where to find your tax returns, and they'll have a picture, of your finances. So just have conversations with your family members, keep really good records, and just be very intentional about leaving a legacy for your family.
Thank you. Viviani?
I would like to say, I want to piggyback off of Bianca, but I would say being transparent about what you want and where you see yourself, whether that's as an individual or as a couple, or for your family. It's imperative that one asks the right questions. No, growing up, they say no question is a wrong question. And that's very true. If you don't know, you don't know. And it's imperative that you ask the question, build a team, find out people who can actually help you answer those questions. In reference to the mortgage side of things, I think education is power. Get with someone that is going to give you the knowledge, again, that's a huge asset. You want to be knowledgeable. You want to know your options. You want to know the different programs that's available to you. Going through a divorce is one of the hardest things, I think, when it comes to asset separation. Attorneys can relate to that. That's one of the biggest things that people tend to fight over, especially when children are involved. So just move with intention, have the knowledge to support the things that you're going through. But I also deal with clients and attorneys that go through the phase of the client is so emotional in the process that sometimes they can make irrational decisions. So having a team that's there for their best interest, whether that's a CPA, whether that's if be an estate planner, or that's a therapist on the team too, because I highly recommend that during this time. It's real. Yeah, it's real. And a financial planner, everyone is there. When you're weak, someone is there supporting you and encouraging you, letting you know that we have this in control. So it's imperative to have a team, understand what you're going through, and just link arm with other women that's just there to guide you through the process. I think this is a wonderful panel. And again, honored to be connected with you ladies, and look forward to having you as a reference or a tool for my clients as well. I can be contacted on social media platform as Vivi Pearson MLO on Instagram and also Facebook. So look forward to connecting with you, and you can contact me directly at 512-884-2117.
Thank you. And we will tag all the speakers in our video so everyone can get in contact with you. Sasha?
I just wanted to say this, I'm here as a realtor and I only have this one little cell, where you can put your eggs into. I'm just one basket, right? But then I just learned so much about, there's so many things that you can do to plan for your family's financial success. And so this has just been very, very informative panel. And just what Vivi was saying, it's very important to have a team of professionals that you can trust. We are, Vivi, and I'm sure other, attorneys here and financial planners, everybody has been that shoulder to cry on with people who get emotional, whether it's or death or excitement. We are not just, we're also psychiatrists too, right? We help out in so many different ways, more than anybody can even imagine. I get questions asked all the time that is way out of my scope. Unless it's illegal, then I just send them to attorneys. But I have answered a lot of questions speaking from a personal experience a lot of the time. So it is very important to connect and just support each other and be together and just kind of reach out to other women, or just like Vivi said. But real estate perspective, if you want to talk more about real estate investing, this is what I do. This is my bread and butter. I would love to be there, for you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out and we'll chat more about it. But thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Ify?
I always say this because I do a lot of podcast interviews. My voice is better than this, but I kind of like this voice too. And that is to be curious. I think if I could leave with anything, it just served me so well. I feel like now I'm almost 40, I can give wisdom, because it feels like certain generations used to die by 40. So it's a blessing to be alive, So just continue to be curious. Just because you don't know something doesn't mean that you can't learn about it. And I think that will really serve you, whether you're looking to hire somebody to help you with your taxes or with a mortgage or with your investments or your real property, whatever it is. Just be curious and trust yourself. I think as women, we undervalue that innate intuition about things, right? And also knowing your limits. You're like, this is beyond me. This is something I can't learn. So let me outsource that. It's okay. And so I would say be curious and then also take action. It's enough I am a Google, like if I could be on a game show, it'd be Jeopardy. I know so much about, so very deep, shallow about many things. But in order to go deep with some things, I have to take action to know more, whether it's to hire someone or to invest in that. And so those are the two: be curious and take action. And then if anyone is interested in estate planning, if you're in Texas or happen to be in Arkansas, I can help you. I'd love to have a consultation with you. You can find me on my website. It's my last name, law.com. And you can read up about, we love to serve women. If you consider yourself a breadwinner, that doesn't mean you even have to make the most. It means that you contribute to your household or you bring money in. We love to work with women who are about taking action and have an intentionality. I don't convince anybody. It's very, very not a sale, like it's not a pressured sale, but it is a great way to get information about your family and what your options are, rather than to feel like it's an area that you don't know about. You don't know about it because you're never supposed to know about it, but we're changing the script. And if I could plug one thing, I'm writing a book on estate planning. Actually, I have my contract with my agent right now.
Awesome.
And I hired a
I
lawyer to
know.
look at my book contract, even though I did business law for many, many years, because I don't know that much about business book contracts. So even people who are quote unquote professionals need professionals.
Absolutely.
And so look out for that. It's definitely written for women and for people who don't think estate planning is for them, even though they're killing it. And I hope to be a person that in my legacy is to change the way that people transfer assets with estate planning as a tool in this
Lovely.
country.
Lovely.
So
Thank you, and congratulations on the new book.
Yes.
Can't wait
Yeah.
to announce it.
Yes, that's amazing. Congratulations.
thank you.
And we have Victoria.
So thank you so much, Olga. First of all, this has been so informative. Thank you, an awesome businesswoman. I'm so excited to join the membership and meet all of you in person. And, you know, I just want to say from a financial planning perspective, be proactive, don't be reactive, because you either get to leave a legacy or you get to leave a mess. No one dies and just breaks even. No one's that good. Okay. So you can either be on one side or the other. And I know, you know, if we all have people that we love deep in our hearts, and you don't want things to be harder for them in the wake of anything that happens to you. You want them to be empowered. You want them to have the best situation possible. I know I feel that way for my family, and there are ways to accomplish this. And it really comes down to just finding your trusted partners that you like and you trust, and that you feel they're knowledgeable and you work well with them, and then build your team. And get your team together, make sure they all know who each other is, right? You don't want a CPA, an estate planning attorney, and a financial planner, and none of them know who each other are, right?
Yes.
So get your team together. It's not hard. And actually, if you find the right people, it's pretty fun. And you leave feeling elated and excited, and sometimes even euphoric, because these are things that are scary and daunting, but they're really not until you get in that room, and then you can just move forward and feel excited about it. So I know, Olga, you said you're going to send out everyone's contact information.
Yes.
So, you know, website, email, phone number, all that stuff, you'll get through Olga. So thank you guys so much. You ladies, it's amazing hearing from you. I can't tell you how excited I was to hear from all of you today. So maybe next time we do this, maybe Iffy, I'll write a book too, and you can be my inspiration, because I've been wanting to write a book for a couple of years.
I'll tell you my entire process.
Yes,
I'll tell you the
Love
entire
that.
process. So please reach out. I'd share all my resources on that. And we all need to have our books out there. It just has to become a norm, because there's so many trash books out there. And it's really wonderful to get books from people who know what they're talking about. So
Thank you so much, ladies. We just gathered in one room the busiest women of probably America. So you should be appreciative of hearing all this advice in one place and one time. And reach out to them, because they are not capitalizing on your life-changing events and problems. They are holding your hands. They are making it easier for you, so you will not regret working with any of them. And we strongly encourage that. Thank you so much for Lost in Businesswoman, and have a great day. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.